Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Books and Bytes, where we dive deep into seminal works and unpack the most fascinating insights. Today we embark on an epic journey through Edward Gibbon's monumental work, The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. So let's unpack this. We're talking about a literary colossus here, a work that spans, 12 volumes? Covering over a millennium of history from the flourishing Pax Romana in the 2nd century CE all the way forward to the fall of Constantinople in 1453.
It really is a truly massive undertaking.
It captures these, colossal forces, political, social, religious, military, that shaped such a significant period in human history.
Indeed. And what's truly captivating, I think, is that Gibbon himself, right there in the very first volume, he meticulously outlines the nature and, importantly, the limits of his grand plan.
Right.
This isn't just a list of events. It's analytical. It's an exploration, a really profound inquiry into the how and the why this vast Roman Empire, from its absolute peak, eventually crumbled.
Not just in the West, either.
No, exactly. In the East as well. It's this comprehensive deep dive into the whole trajectory of empire.
So for you, the listener, this means we're getting a kind of privileged shortcut, maybe. A way to understand this huge sweep of history and Gibbon's profound, often quite surprising insights. We'll be grappling with these core themes, like the empire's journey from that immense power and peace under the Antonines to its fragmentation and eventual collapse.
And examining that interplay, right? The external pressures, barbarian incursions versus the internal decay, the political intrigue, those deep shifts in societal values.
Exactly.
And a crucial thread, you absolutely have to talk about this with Gibbon, is the huge impact of religion.
Christianity and Islam.
Specifically, yes, the rise of Christianity and Islam and their really profound effects on the state, on society, even on warfare itself.
But Gibbon himself, his perspective is unique, isn't it? Often quite critical, cosmopolitan.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that viewpoint was largely shaped by his experiences. Notably his formative years in Lausanne, Switzerland. Not really Oxford, which he famously didn't think much of, educationally speaking.
Right. He wasn't exactly complimentary about Oxford.
No, not at all. It was in Lausanne that his intellect really blossomed. He became fluent in French. It was like a second native tongue to him. And he really engaged with the Enlightenment culture of the continent. He even knew Voltaire slightly.
Wow.
Yeah, so this gave him a mindset that was, very different from a purely English viewpoint. It allowed him this broader, more kind of global lens to examine Roman history through. And
their broader critical lens really defines his approach, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You especially see it when he looks at what many people think of as the empire's golden age, the Pax Romana. How does he portray that period?
Well, it's fascinating. He identifies the reigns of Hadrian and the two Antonines, that's about 43 years, as the moment of the empire's greatest power and, prosperity.
The peak.
The absolute peak. He describes it as a time of virtual, universal peace. Emperors weren't really looking for new conquests. They were deliberately focused on maintaining the dignity, the integrity of the empire within its existing borders.
Interesting.
Yeah, their actions, as Gibbon puts it, were actuated only by the love of order and justice. The Roman name itself commanded such reverence that even, fierce barbarian tribes would often submit their disputes to the emperor's arbitration. They saw Rome as a source of stability.
So Rome was the respected superpower.
Totally. There's even this intriguing anecdote Gibbon relates from a contemporary historian about ambassadors being refused the very honor they sought, which was to be admitted into the rank of Roman subjects.
They wanted to be subjects.
Yes, because the empire felt it no longer needed to expand its population. That just speaks volumes about the level of prestige, that perceived invincibility.
Yet, even in this golden age, Gibbon insists those subtle, insidious seeds of internal decay were already being sown. And maybe no figure illustrates that inherent fragility more starkly than Commodus, son of the great Marcus Aurelius, no less.
Exactly. His reign, 13 years, was, as Gibbon just lays it out, utterly consumed by vice and infamy. It's a catastrophic turn.
How does Gibbon portray it? What went wrong?
Well, Gibbon details how Commodus, despite all the flattery from his court, he knew people despised him. He knew, and that knowledge just fueled his cruelty.
Right.
He describes this chilling reign of terror. Consular senators, even his own ministers, his close companions, sacrificed to his suspicion, his bloodlust. Commodus, he was physically strong, athletic, but morally just. bankrupt.
And he fought as a gladiator.
Yes. He debased himself fighting in the arena. That just appalled the Roman elite. It was a profound shock to their whole understanding of imperial dignity. His tyranny got so extreme that his own household started to fear him.
So the inner circle turned on him.
They had to. Marcia, his favorite concubine, Eclectus, his chamberlain, and Latus, the praetorian prefect. They realized their own lives were on the line. They decided they had to act.
So they plotted to poison him. But even that didn't quite finish the job.
No, not entirely. After Commodus had worn himself out hunting beasts in the amphitheater, Marcia gave him a poisoned cup of wine. But while he was struggling with the poison and, frankly, drunkenness,
Right.
a strong wrestler named Narcissus, hired by the conspirators, slipped into his chamber and just strangled him. No resistance.
Wow. Quick and brutal.
And the conspirators moved incredibly fast then, got his body secretly removed before anyone really knew he was dead. It shows the desperation, the ruthlessness right at the heart of power.
And their next move was immediate putting Pertinax, the city prefect, on the throne. It highlights the chaos, but also how critical individuals could be in these moments.
Absolutely. Pertinax was this old-school senator, consular rank, proven merit, one of Marcus Aurelius's last trusted ministers.
A respected figure.
Very. So when he's woken late at night by the chamberlain and the prefect, he assumes they're there to kill him on Commodus's orders. Gibbon says he received them with intrepid resignation.
Ready for the worst.
Exactly. But instead, they offer him the throne. His acceptance, once he was convinced Commodus was really dead, Gibbon describes it as sincere reluctance. He understood the burdens, the dangers of that supreme rank. He knew the price.
So from that kind of moral decay with Commodus, we shift to more systemic changes. Military, political transformations reshaping the empire. The Praetorian Guard, for instance, they played a fascinating, often contradictory role.
Oh, their influence was immense. Originally, maybe 9,000 or 10,000 elite troops around Rome. Vitellius boosted them to 16,000, though Vespasian brought them back down to 9 cohorts.
Protectors, but also problems.
Exactly. For centuries, they were the protectors of Rome, but also its oppressors. They were kingmakers, often literally auctioning off the imperial throne. Yet Gibbon notes something interesting. For a time, as their raw power maybe waned a bit, the camp of the Praetorians began to protect the majesty of Rome, uniting their strength with the Senate.
So a complex internal dynamic.
Very. Even a corrupt institution could sometimes prop up a weakening state.
Which leads us straight to Diocletian's reforms. Huge changes that really chipped away at those old structures. He and Maximian fundamentally changed imperial authority and, crucially, the Senate's role.
Yes, the changes under Diocletian were absolutely fundamental. The Praetorians, their numbers were cut, their privileges systematically abolished.
Replaced.
Eventually, yes, by 2 loyal legions from Illyricum, the Jovians, and Herculeans. They became the new imperial guards, reporting directly to the emperor.
And the Senate.
This is key. What Gibbon calls the fatal, though secret wound to the Senate was Diocletian and Maximian choosing to live away from Rome.
Why was that so critical?
Because as long as emperors lived in the capital, the Senate, even if it was oppressed, couldn't really be ignored. Laws still technically needed Senate ratification, preserving a sort of fig leaf of ancient freedom.
Okay.
But once emperors moved out, they dropped the pretense of being just the first magistrate. They governed as absolute monarchs, consulting only their hand-picked ministers, not the great council of the nation.
So the Senate became irrelevant.
Pretty much. Its name was still mentioned with honor, members got distinctions, but it became, in Gibbon's famous phrase, a venerable but useless monument of antiquity. It lost all real connection to power, just a hollowed-out shell.
This shift in internal power dynamics brings us to warfare, especially with the barbarians. Gibbon draws this stark contrast between the disciplined Roman legions and what he calls the naked and unassisted valor of the barbarians.
The contrast couldn't be more striking, could it? Roman soldiers. Full armor, rigorous discipline, complex drills, fortified camps to machine.
Right.
Barbarians, raw courage, rushing into battle with dissonant shouts and disordered ranks. Maybe just a shield for armor. Their initial charge could be terrifying, incredibly powerful. But they lack the ability to rally or retreat effectively. So if they were pushed back, a repulse often became a total, irreversible defeat.
So how did these seemingly less organized forces eventually manage to defeat Rome?
Well, Gibbon suggests a few things. Roman vigor got sapped by luxury, discipline got lax. but also, crucially, the practice of bringing barbarian auxiliaries into Roman armies.
Ah, integrating them.
Yes, even with precautions, it was, as he says, attended with very obvious dangers. The example of Civilis, this Batavian leader, proves it wasn't just theoretical.
What did he do?
He'd served Rome, learned their military tactics inside out, then he used that knowledge against them, formed a plan for freedom, led Batavian cohorts and German armies into Gaul, swayed Roman cities to join him, defeated legions, destroyed camps. He used Roman tactics against Rome.
And succeeded.
He secured an honorable treaty. The Batavians became allies, not servants. It makes you wonder, and Gibbon subtly asks this, how much did Rome's own integration and training meant to strengthen itself actually end up forging its future enemies?
That's a profound paradox, isn't it? Teaching others might arm your own downfall.
It really is.
Which brings us to a crucial military blunder, Julian's Persian campaign. It speaks volumes about logistics, terrain, the non-battle factors.
Oh, Julian's campaign is a powerful, almost tragic illustration. Modern armies have huge artillery trains, but even the Romans needed to feed 60,000 men, a huge logistical challenge.
Especially in enemy territory.
Exactly. The area between the Tigris and Media was fertile, but the Persians used scorched earth tactics brilliantly. Deserted villages, drove off cattle, burned all the grass and crops. They deliberately created a smoking and naked desert for the Romans.
So the army marched into a wasteland.
Pretty much, starved of resources, and this compounded Julian's own mistake in rejecting Sapor's peace offers, which were actually quite favorable. Maybe, given muses, he was trying to be like Alexander the Great, always spurning Darius.
Hubris.
Perhaps. Then, to make it worse, treacherous guides led his army astray, wandering east of Baghdad. The heat was unbearable for troops used to Gaul and Germany. They were just exhausted by marching and constant fighting.
And the Persians kept up the pressure.
Constantly. Cavalry skirmishes, bigger fights like the one at Maranga, which Gibbon says almost deserved the name of a battle. Heavy Roman losses.
A losing battle against the environment and the enemy.
And against time. Their supplies were dwindling fast. Famine became a real, terrifying threat. Julian himself shared his own sparse provisions, but it was a drop in the ocean. It's a vivid picture of an empire stretched thin, fighting the elements as much as the enemy.
Okay, shifting gears from military struggles to another monumental force Gibbon identifies, the rise of Christianity and the pagan response. This is a complex and sometimes controversial part of his work, right? Especially with his Enlightenment view.
It is, absolutely. And Gibbon tackles it head-on with his usual frankness. He explains that Roman polytheism was inherently quite tolerant. Different gods, different rituals. The populace saw them as equally true, philosophers maybe equally false, but crucially, magistrates saw them as equally useful for social order.
So, live and let live, religiously speaking.
Pretty much. It fostered this general religious harmony. You could worship your national gods, but also adopt others you encountered. The pagan world, despite its variety, wasn't fundamentally discordant.
But Christianity, with its exclusive claims, its single God that broke the mold.
Fundamentally, Christians weren't seen like the Jews, who stuck to ancient ancestral rites and were mostly left alone. Christians, by embracing the gospel, were seen as dissolving sacred ties, violating old institutions, scorning what their ancestors believed.
Rejecting the whole system.
Exactly. Rejecting communion with the gods of Rome, the empire, what Romans saw as mankind's shared heritage. This made them appear impious atheists, even and a threat to the state's religious constitution. It was an unnatural and unpardonable offense in the Roman view. Their refusal to join civic religious ceremony, seen as loyalty acts, was deeply problematic.
So initial surprise turned to resentment, and they struggled to grasp the Christian concept of God.
They really did. This pure and sublime idea of a supreme being with no statues, no visible symbols, none of the usual pomp. It just didn't compute for the gross conception of the pagan multitude.
Even the educated Romans.
Even them. Often steeped in philosophy, they take a careless glance and dismiss Christianity as wild enthusiasm. A religion that rejected sensory aids, no temples, no sacrifices, no visible gods, seemed inherently unstable, unable to restrain fanaticism, a potential source of disorder. Its abstractness was alienating, its exclusivity threatening.
Now, when we get to persecution, especially the Diocletianic persecution, Gibbon offers a more nuanced view than we might expect. He warns against relying solely on Christian historians like Eusebius.
Yes. This caution is classic Gibbon, very Enlightenment. He doesn't deny the horrors, let's be clear, But he introduces 2 points that he argues suggest the general treatment was less intolerable than it is usually imagined.
Okay, what are they?
First, he notes that confessors condemned to the mines were sometimes, either through the humanity or negligence of their keepers, allowed to build chapels and practice their religion freely. Not always, but it shows it wasn't consistently total suppression.
Interesting. And the second?
Second, he points out that bishops often had to actively restrain the forward zeal of some Christians who basically voluntarily threw themselves at the magistrates, seeking martyrdom.
Why would they do that?
Gibbon suggests various motives. Escaping poverty or debt, perhaps, or simply gaining renown within the Christian community. It doesn't excuse the persecution, but it adds layers. It makes us consider the complex motivations on both sides.
And then the huge turning point, Constantine's conversion. Gibbon suggests this was driven by interested motives, by ambition. He gets quite critical here.
Absolutely. Gibbon argues that while Christians were a minority, they had this spirit in union that was invaluable to Constantine, especially facing a degenerate people largely indifferent to who ruled them.
A reliable base of support.
A fervent, loyal base, expecting divine and miraculous aid. Constantine, learning from his father's pragmatism, strategically favored Christians, gave them public office, trusted their fidelity. This led to rapid conversions in the court and army.
Even among barbarian troops.
Yes, Gibbon notes German barbarians in the legions, being of a careless temper, just went along with their commander's religion. And significantly, bishops actively encouraged military service, even excommunicating soldiers who quit the army for the church in peacetime.
So, a mutually beneficial relationship.
A powerful, reciprocal relationship. Political power and religious faith reinforcing each other. Astute political pragmatism meeting spiritual fervor, as Gibbon highlights.
This inevitably leads to the debate about Constantine's true beliefs. Was he genuinely religious? Or was it all politics? A system of parity, maybe?
Historians still argue about it. Some, like Burckhardt, thought he was fundamentally irreligious. Others see his actions like allowing pagan priests, sacerdotales, flamines, to keep privileges, or the Thais cult in Constantinople as pragmatic toleration.
Not rocking the boat too much.
Exactly. As the historian Rank noted, Constantine couldn't replace the disorders of persecution with potentially worse ones from a violent pagan reaction. It suggests a careful, measured approach, a mix of personal belief, political need, and a desire for stability.
And after Constantine, we get the dramatic counter-reaction. Julian the Apostate trying to revive paganism. His story is compelling, that 10 years of pretending to be Christian.
A remarkable deception. His ambition, once he got power, was to restore country and religion. The old pagan ways, the Roman identity he felt was lost. He tried to do it without outright persecution, avoiding the guilt or reproach, as Gibbon says.
But his actions were still hostile.
Unmistakably. And Christians saw them that way. When Christians destroyed pagan temples, say in Pessinus or Caesarea, Julian punished them. But that just gave them the honors of martyrdom, strengthening Christian resolve.
So his efforts were doomed.
It shows the immense momentum Christianity already had. It was incredibly difficult, almost impossible to reverse. Julian's disguise, as Libanius called it, like an ass in a lion's skin, or Julian's own metaphor, a lion forced into an ass's skin lasted a decade, driven by deep conviction, but ultimately futile against the tide.
This internal strife wasn't just state versus religion. Gibbon also details conflicts within the church, the rise of ecclesiastical authority leading to, well, some unedifying squabbles.
He certainly does, often with a rather sardonic tone. He notes the emergence of this clear split between laity and clergy, an order of men unknown to Greeks and Romans, which, he says, has furnished the most important, though not always the most edifying, subjects for modern history.
Quite the understatement.
Indeed. Despite huge internal mutual hostilities, theological fights, their collective zeal was remarkably united in one common cause, expanding their Christian empire through rewards and punishment.
He gives examples.
Oh, yes. The fierce row between Nestorius and Cyril involving popes, saints, accusations of heresy flying back and forth. His detailed account of Athanasius's condemnations and supports reveals serious corruption, honors, gifts, and immunities openly traded for bishops' votes.
So church politics mirroring imperial politics.
In some ways, yes. The early church was grappling with power struggles very similar to those in the Roman Empire it was gradually replacing.
As the empire weakened internally, the West fragmented relentlessly. Gibbon chronicles the barbarian settlements in Gaul and Spain with chilling detail.
The arrival of the Suevi, Vandals, and Alani in Spain brought dreadful calamities: famine, plague, horrific suffering, even cannibalism, as Gibbon describes it, with wild beasts attacking people in desolate landscapes.
The complete breakdown.
Yet, paradoxically, after this devastation, the barbarians settled. And Gibbon notes something astonishing. The greatest part of the Spaniards actually preferred this new poverty and barbarism to the severe oppressions of the Roman government.
Preferred barbarian rule.
Some did. For many, the new grim reality was seen as better than Roman bureaucracy and taxes. It's a powerful indictment of late Roman rule itself.
That's incredible. What about the Goths, Franks, and Burgundians in Gaul? How did they integrate?
Well, the Goths under Wallius settled in Aquitaine, the Bordeaux region, just 43 years after crossing the Danube. Franks and Burgundians also got permanent footholds in Gaul.
And integration.
It was gradual, often pragmatic. The conquered Romans passed on Christianity and Latin, though the language degenerated into local dialects. But the Merovingian rulers were surprisingly tolerant. Romans often kept property, privileges, even held high office, served in German armies.
A mixing of cultures.
A complex mixing. Gibbon mentions a Roman choosing to aspire or descend to the character and title of a barbarian. And the clergy, almost all provincial Romans, held huge power and wealth through superstition. Gibbon notes a bishop's life was valued at 900 gold pieces in their laws. So not simple conquest, but this intricate interweaving of cultures, power structures, with Roman influence persisting, especially through the church.
Okay, let's pivot east now. Justinian's grand attempt at a Roman revival in the 6th century. His rise to power was, well, shadowed by suspicion from the start.
Very much so. His uncle, Emperor Justin, brought him from rustic solitude in Dacia to Constantinople. Justinian rose fast, politically savvy, but faced dark accusations like assassinating Vitalian, a powerful Gothic chief stabbed 17 times at a royal banquet. Justinian was widely blamed.
Ruthless ambition.
Seems like it. Once in power, he strategically courted the Catholics, reconciled with the Pope, put loyal Christians in office. He also wowed the public with incredible spectacles. His consulship cost a fortune, 288,000 gold pieces, given estimates. He put on shows with 20 lions, 30 leopards, a massive display of imperial power and wealth.
And his most famous project, the reconquest of North Africa by his general, Belisarius.
Belisarius's Vandalic War was remarkable. Vandals outnumbered Romans 10-1, apparently, but were crushed at Tricameron. Gibbon calls it an inconsiderable carnage for the Romans that extinguished a nation in a day.
A swift victory.
But Gibbon, always observing human nature, notes the victory led to wild looting by Roman troops. Avarice itself was almost satiated, he says. Even victorious armies can be unruly.
Belisarius then moved to Italy, facing the Goths, a much tougher fight.
Much tougher. A grueling campaign. Rome itself was captured and recaptured multiple times, showing its enduring importance, even diminished. Belisarius was resourceful, repairing walls with rude and dissimilar materials, using soldiers as a Spartan rampart at gates.
But he struggled with resources.
Yes, he often had to operate despite the parsimony or poverty of the emperor, meaning he had to squeeze loyal subjects for supplies. His most famous act of defiance was rejecting Justinian's peace treaty that would have split Italy. He vowed to bring the Gothic king Vitiges back in chains.
Did he succeed?
Ultimately, no. Gibbon says his later efforts were basely vanquished by the delay, the disobedience, and the cowardice of his own officers. He was recalled to Constantinople, a bitter end to that campaign.
And what happened to Belisarius after that? Disgrace.
Not quite disgrace. He returned, faced a conspiracy, nearly got assassinated but was pardoned. He stayed in high office, the first of the Romans, even defended Constantinople from Bulgarians later. But Gibbon adds, pointedly, he remained the slave of his wife, Theodora.
Theodora's influence.
Immense. Even after her death, Gibbon notes, the servitude of habit and affection became less disgraceful. He gives an example of their daughter's marriage being dissolved by her unfeeling mother after Theodora died. Belisarius, the great general, was still caught in the Byzantine court's web.
Moving on again, we hit an even more dramatic shift, maybe the most pivotal Gibbon identifies, the rise of Islam. While Byzantium was exhausted by wars with Persia and internal church divisions, a new power emerges.
Yes, Gibbon frames this moment with huge significance. Muhammad rises with the sword in one hand and the Quran in the other, ready to build his throne on the ruins of Christianity in Rome, a profound turning point, fundamentally changing the world map.
What made the Arabs so formidable, in Gibbon's view? That perpetual independence he mentions.
He puts it down to their character and their country. intrepid valor from a pastoral life, fierce military virtues. Their usual internal feuds were suspended against a common enemy, and tactically, they had hope of victory in the front, in the rear, the assurance of a retreat.
Mobe.
Exactly. Swift horses, camels meant they could escape easily, minimizing risk. This combination, fierce independence, unity, mobility, made them unstoppable initially.
And the engine of this power was the Quran itself. How did Gibbon see its influence?
He notes its compilation from scattered revelations, palm leaves, shoulder bones of mutton. Muhammad rested his whole mission on the book's merit, challenging men and angels to imitate its beauties. This, Gibbon says, powerfully appealed to the devout Arabian, attuned to faith and rapture.
In the ideas within it.
Crucially, the tenets of fate and predestination, the belief that no danger where there was no chance, that you were safe until your appointed hour. This fatalism, plus the promise of paradise for martyrs, fueled their courage, their unstoppable zeal in those early conquests.
And those conquests were incredibly rapid: Syria, Egypt.
Astonishingly fast. Muhammad himself fought in battles, leading the conquest of Arabia. Spoil was regulated by divine law, a fifth for charity, the rest shared, cavalry getting double a powerful incentive. Paradise awaited martyrs.
Key battles.
Bedr and Uhud showed early struggles. Then the decisive Battle of the Yermouk against the Romans, a crushing Byzantine defeat. Gibbon even notes Arab women pushing men back into the fight. Damascus fell, then Emesa, Jerusalem. Gibbon cites huge casualty numbers, though we should remember his caution about sources.
And Alexandria.
Conquered by Amru after a 14-month siege. Amru's description of its riches is amazing. 4,000 palaces, 4,000 baths. He later made that famous vow to make it accessible as the house of a prostitute by tearing down walls if the infidels came back. And he did.
As this new power rose, how did the Byzantines respond? Emperor Zimisces tried, didn't he?
He did. Zimisces, in the 10th century, had impressive campaigns in Syria, reaching Damascus, even the Euphrates and Tigris. Significant but temporary successes.
But there were internal problems.
Yes. Gibbon recounts Zimisces being shocked to find eunuchs held the best lands in conquered areas. He exclaimed, "And is it for them that we shed our blood?" It shows a persistent internal corruption that hampered Byzantium, even with capable leaders. His likely poisoning soon after underscores the dangerous court intrigue.
This brings us to the later Byzantine Empire, struggling against new enemies and its own military decline.
Gibbon paints a sad picture. Armor carried in chariots, put on reluctantly, lack of discipline. The Macedonian pike shortened. Archery decayed, a major cause of problems, emperors lamented. The Byzantines were described as having a cold hand and a loquacious tongue.
All talk, no action.
That's the implication. Tactics aimed at avoiding defeat, procrastinating, not winning decisively. A defensive, demoralized mindset. Militarily, they were stagnant or regressing compared to the Latins.
Amidst this weakness, new threats kept coming. The Bulgarians, for example.
A persistent threat for centuries. Emerged from Attila's empire, settled near the Danube, became Avar subjects, revolted, migrated, eventually established a powerful kingdom in Moesia, right on Byzantium's doorstep.
Zimisces fought them too.
Yes, he won a significant victory against Swiatoslaus, the Russian prince allied with Bulgarians, captured key cities like Marsinopolis and Dristra. Swiatoslaus was forced into a humiliating treaty after a long siege. It highlights Byzantium's constant struggle just to contain these powers.
And in Italy, the Normans emerged as another disruptive force.
Truly disruptive. Positioned on the verge of the two empires, taking titles from Germany or Constantinople, but really relying on conquest and sheer nerve. They were rapacious, untrusted.
Byzantium tried to get rid of them.
Tried to ship them off to fight in Persia, but the Normans refused, clinging to their Italian gains. Their defiance even led Pope Leo IX to ally with both Eastern and Western emperors against them, showing the Pope's growing temporal power against these sacrilegious robbers.
Meanwhile, further east, the Seljuk Turks were rising.
Another major force. The Seljuks, originally Turkmens, converted to Islam. Tughril Beg, the first sultan, expanded across Persia, pushed out the Ghaznavids, reached Roman borders, even demanded tribute from Constantinople.
A devout leader.
Very.
Yeah.
He's known for prayers, fasting, building mosques before palaces. His firm rule brought order, attracted Arabs and Persians, cementing his empire, a new, potent threat for Byzantium.
And then an even bigger shift. The Mongols under Genghis Khan.
Colossal. Genghis Khan's empire stretched from the Persian Gulf to India, Turkestan. Unprecedented scale. His desire for trade was shattered by the murder of his envoys at Otrar, provoking devastating war.
Vast armies.
Huge. European battles were petty skirmishes in comparison, Gibbon notes. 700,000 Mongols against 400,000 Sultan's troops, maybe 160,000 killed in the first battle alone.
And technology played a role.
This is key. Gibbon highlights Zimbus using Chinese engineers, skilled in the mechanic arts, maybe even with the secret of gunpowder. They overwhelmed fortified cities like Otrar, Samarkand. It suggests enemies were catching up, even surpassing Roman discipline with numbers and technology.
Finally, the Ottomans, their true era, starting with Prusa.
Yes, Prusa's conquest by Orchan, Othman's son, marked the beginning. It became a Mohammedan capital, mosques, colleges, hospitals. Orchan reformed the military. Regular infantry trained from captives, not just Turkmen cavalry.
That made a difference.
Huge. Allowed them to take Nice, Nicomedia, defeat Emperor Andronicus the Younger, control Bithynia. Gibbon notes Orchan's justice and clemency attracted more Turks. They were also incredibly resilient, bouncing back after Timur's invasion. Gibbon's famous line, "The massy trunk was bent, but rose with fresh vigor."
But they had internal struggles.
After Bajazet's captivity, yes, his sons fought for the throne. The Greek Emperor Manuel II cleverly exploited this, forming alliances, releasing a rival claimant, true or false Mustafa, to sow division. Desperate Byzantine diplomacy in its final centuries.
This long, complex story, over 1,000 years, culminates in the final act, the fall of Constantinople. It really highlights Byzantium's isolation at the end.
Absolutely profound isolation. Support from Western Europe. Minimal. The Pope, Nicholas V, foretold their approaching ruin, but his efforts were faint and unavailing.
Too little, too late.
Exactly. Constantinople fell before Genoese and Venetian squadrons even left port. The Greek islands stayed neutral. The powerful Genoese colony right across the water in Galata cut its own deal with Muhammad II, prioritizing trade.
And internal problems, too.
Gibbon points to the avarice of the rich inside Constantinople, denying the emperor funds for defense, saving their treasures for the Turks, a cynical, self-defeating move.
And Muhammad II's siege wasn't a gamble, but methodical.
Totally methodical, relentless.
Yeah.
He swept the surrounding towns, accepting surrender or exterminating resistance. Calabria alone put up a real fight. Then, April 6th, 1453, he plants his standard outside the St. Romanus Gate. The final siege begins, the inevitable culmination of everything Gibbon has described. So what does this all mean for you, the listener? The fall wasn't just one battle, it was the end point of this incredibly long, complex process. Gibbon details over 12 huge volumes. He shows you the layers, political decay, military evolution, religious upheaval, societal shifts, all contributing.
Right.
It really drives home that empires rarely fall from a single cause. It's this confluence of forces, external and internal, eroding the foundations over centuries, often subtly, until the final collapse just seems, well, inevitable.
What an absolutely incredible journey through 1,000 years, distilled through Gibbon's profound work. It really makes you appreciate that intricate dance between power, culture, human nature.
Yeah.
How small changes, moral compromises can build up to huge shifts with devastating consequences.
And if you connect it to the bigger picture, Gibbon's Decline and Fall isn't just a history book. It's this powerful meditation on the nature of empires themselves. It highlights how internal weaknesses, eroding civic virtue, declining military discipline, corruption, what he saw as superstition can be just as destructive, maybe more so, than any external threat.
Yeah.
His narrative constantly forces you to think about those unseen, insidious forces that can hollow out a great power from within.
And maybe what's most fascinating is how Gibbon, with his incredible learning, that cosmopolitan view, his meticulous detail, makes this centuries-long story feel so personal, so immediate. He weaves the grand sweep with individual actions, flaws of emperors, generals, religious figures. It's this rich tapestry that still resonates, forcing us to reflect on these persistent patterns of human ambition and decline.
Which really raises an important question for you, the listener. Considering the factors Gibbon identifies: internal corruption, military decay, societal shifts, new belief systems shaking things up, what parallels, if any, can we draw to the forces shaping the great powers and societies of our own time? What might Gibbon, with that discerning eye and maybe that cynical wit, say is declining or falling around us today?